Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on the Athletics of Business podcast. It is funny how life brings us back together.
It's been a while, but I'm super excited to catch up, spend some time with you.
Hey, all I know is it seems like yesterday I was sitting in Peoria Civic Center watching you and your teammates at Schaumburg High School hoist that. It was 2001 state championship trophy. Some will call it the biggest upset, right, in IHSA history. I didn't think it was an upset at all. I think you guys did what you did the entire year, and you just played, and you were just yourselves. But man, I guess it wasn't yesterday though. It's been a few years.
It's been a few years. It's been a few kids ago. There's been a lot of a couple decades, but yeah, some good memories in that gym.
Hey, it's been a treat for me, following you since you were a little guy, following you through your high school career and then your college career at UWM with Coach Pearl, and then coaching with Coach Pearl. There's a lot of similarities that we have, and we're aligned on so many things. And I think one of those things that we're aligned on is what the game of basketball meant to us, not just as an athlete, not just as coaches, but as a human, right? As a person. And I don't know how it was for you, but for me, when we got fired at Texas A&M in 1998, when our head coach got reassigned, I was at a crossroads in life. And what am I going to do? I was only 28 years old. I've been in the gym my entire life. I absolutely loved it. But I knew there was something else. I knew there was something more where I could go still have an impact on people. One of the struggles I had, Mark, was I quickly realized how, I don't want to use the word lost I was, but how I had to figure out who I was, because I had spent a lifetime identifying with who I was with what I did. In other words, playing the game of basketball, right? Being a coach's son, coaching the game of basketball at a pretty decent level. Like, to me, that I just thought that was life. I just thought that was all that existed in the world. Yep. Was it a challenge for you when you walked away from your coaching career? Even before that, why don't you walk the listener through what your career was like after you graduated from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee?
Yeah, well, I mean, it started even before that, right? My dad was a really successful basketball player in the suburbs of Illinois. Went to DePaul when DePaul was actually really good and
really good.
And they were going to the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16s. My dad's family, the last name Pancratz. I mean, all of his brothers. I mean, one played at Illinois. I mean, they were just a successful sports family growing up in that northwest suburbs of Chicago. And then my mom played volleyball. My mom, a Hall of Fame volleyball coach in the state of Illinois. And so I grew up in the gym with my parents. Sports, in a lot of ways, was our life. It was our identity. And it was awesome. There were so many blessings from it. Blessing of having a mom work at the high school that I went to meant that I could get in the gym before school and get shots up, and I could stay there, and I could play against the high school kids when I was in middle school and get beat up a bunch, and then go into the gym later and work on your game, saying, man, I'm trying to beat those guys. And so growing up in that family, in that sports environment was a huge blessing. It allowed me to get some opportunities to play in college for Coach Pearl at Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I was Coach Pearl's first recruit after Bo Ryan left UWM and took the Wisconsin job, which opened up a scholarship. Us beating Eddie Curry and Thornwood in the championship opened up a lot more scholarship opportunity. And went to Milwaukee, and I had a chance to go to some different programs. The reason I chose UWM with Coach Pearl is because he had a track record of success. He won a Division II national championship prior to coming to UWM. And I was close enough to home in Milwaukee, but far enough away. And it turned out to be a really good move because we won a lot of championships at Milwaukee, and just had a great college experience before that next transition.
What was it like playing? Like I was very fortunate. I got to know Coach Pearl when he was at Southern Indiana. I was at Lewis. I mean, we had some battles.
Yeah.
And not just on the court, but in the recruiting world, right? As you can only imagine. And just his teams, they played so hard. And he didn't overcomplicate things, and he didn't try to act like he reinvented the wheel. What were some of the takeaways as a player that you had, and then obviously coaching for him?
Yeah. It's interesting. Coach Pearl ended up being almost a complete opposite of my high school coach and my dad. my high school coach, again, I was blessed to be around a lot of successful people. Bob Williams, I got inducted to the Hall of Fame in the state of Illinois. And Coach Williams, man, he was always hardest on his best players. My dad was always hardest on his best players. My dad never really said, I love you, but I always remember him saying to me, man, if you ain't working, somebody else is. And when it comes push to shove and you go up against that individual that's been working hard, they're going to beat you if you're not working hard. So you got to outwork people. I get to Milwaukee, and Coach Pearl's known for X's and O's, being a player's coach, being a great marketer. And it was interesting that he allowed his best players to make more mistakes and coached them way differently than my high school coach, my dad, where the best players, like, you weren't allowed to make mistakes. I'm going to be hard on the best players because that's going to be a trickle-down effect to the rest of the program. Coach Pearl, it was the inverse. It was like, hey, I'm going to let these great players, because they're great, I got to be willing to let a little bit more go by, but I'm not going to let that happen with my 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th band. And man, that was tough. That was tough getting to be a part of. But I grew to appreciate how much Coach really did. Coach Pearl really did know the game, appreciate everybody that was on the team. And he taught me a lot about the X's and O's. Then even as I transitioned eventually out of the coaching world, on how to be a business person. I mean, Coach Pearl's a great salesman, and you see that a lot in the way that he coaches these days.
Hey, I got to ask them before we even go back into some other stuff. I have no idea how this just popped in my head. Well, I do, because I can't unsee it. But I remember when you guys were at Tennessee and Pat Summitt, huge game, women's team, and I'm watching on ESPN. All of a sudden, the camera goes to Coach Pearl on the baseline in the student section or whatever, wherever the student section was, right? Shirt off, full-blown body paint. Please tell me you did not help apply the body paint. That was one of the most epic visuals I've ever seen, man.
Coach, you've not looked at that picture close enough. Look who the O is. I'm the O.
No, are you serious?
Yeah. So
I need to find that picture and put it in the show notes. Matter of fact, that needs to be part of our creative piece there.
So here's the story, right? So Coach Pearl comes to me. By the time we got fired with Pearl, I was his right-hand man, because I knew, X's and O's. I was in on everything. Thankfully, outside of the recruiting pieces that got us fired, but I was on everything. So he decides that it's number 1 versus number 2 coming, and he's going to go support the Lady Vols, and he's going to paint his chest. And he's like, hey, I need 5 guys to do it. And none of the players would do it. And the brothers really couldn't do it because the orange paint wouldn't really show much. So it had to be the white guys. Could only get 3 others, so himself and 3 others. Yeah. So he says, Pancratz, you're doing it. Man. So I was like, well, Coach, I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it if I'm right next to you, because I knew, like, it was going to be all over the place. And it was in the centerfold of ESPN magazine, Sports Illustrated, like it was everywhere.
Well played on your part, by the way. Well played.
What people don't know that I still joked with him about today is after he gets the paint on, he's in the back in the training room doing push-ups and curls. So that way when he comes out, like, he's got a little flex going on. And man, it was a blast. Like the program was on all-time high. People were loving it. He was the king of the city. It was a fun time.
But that's what he does. I can't wait to see him again. He's actually doing the push-ups, right? Sit-ups weren't going to do him any good. Push-ups, I got it. Yeah.
The curls and the push-ups, he was all in on it.
That's awesome. But he could sell anything. Like, he was just a master.
When we were at UWM and we were when he got there, we were at the Klatsche Center, which is right on campus. Probably fits 3,000, 3,500 people. By the second or third year, because he was in cafeterias, handing out free pizzas. He's going around the community. We're playing at the U.S. Cellular, which was where the Bucks used to play.
The old Mecca.
And it was a sellout, and that was a 11,000 person arena that in a short period of time, because of the way that we played, obviously we had to win, but because of his personality, just encapsulated the whole entire city.
Yeah. So what was that like when you walked away from coaching? After everything went down in Tennessee, what was that like for you?
I got done playing at UWM, and I really wasn't 100% certain I was going to get into college coaching. I thought about some different avenues. My family's in the medical space, medical sales and whatnot, and I thought about coaching high school. But then he called and offered me a job, so I went down there. Uh, we get fired, and look, I had been down in Knoxville, and I didn't really know anybody, and my whole coaching tree, so to speak, was Coach Pearl's, and that was just somebody that just got fired for the on-campus recruiting violations of the barbecue. And so then, by the grace of God, which I think is a whole nother story, Conzo Martin takes over for Pearl. Conzo Martin ends up retaining me, and because one of the things I did for Coach Pearl and Coach Summit is I ran a lot of their basketball camps, and for Pearl, I did a lot of the scouting of the opponents. Two of which things Coach Conzo Martin, didn't really enjoy the most, and so they contracted me to run the camps. Well, I saw that as my opportunity to try to get back in with Conzo Martin, even though everybody told me, man, it's going to be a long shot because you just got fired with the previous staff. But I basically lived at that arena for 2 months, trying to show Coach Martin I would do anything and everything to get an opportunity to stay with the program. And by the grace of God, Conzo ended up retaining me. And so then I worked 2 years with Conzo. I kind of started over. I went back to like basically director of scouting. And I was with Conzo for 2 years. And then we fast forward to deciding to get out of coaching. It was really, really hard. Like we go back to my upbringing, right? My parents being around sports. My family was known as basketball. My whole identity in a lot of ways was around the success that surrounded our family and myself with basketball. And it was not odd in Knoxville, which is a college town, when I was coaching. I mean, I could call about any donor. I could call people around town and be like, "Hey, Ed, man, I just had some time free up on my calendar. You want to go grab lunch?" And about anybody in town would be like, "Yeah, like I'd love to talk basketball, get some inside scoop on Tennessee athletics." And then you leave coaching. Oh, and you go get into the financial services world.
That's it right there, though. Yep.
And now, like, nobody's going to pick up the call. No one wants to spend time. Like, it's like, it was, man, it was the hardest thing to walk through and to fight through, walking away from basketball and that identity piece that was just all of a sudden instantly gone.
Well, and it didn't help that people ghost you, right? Or they avoid you a little bit. Not like you're to play, but almost like, you're to play. How did you handle that mentally? Like, how did you start working through that? Like realizing, okay, this life isn't going to work this way if that's how I identify with myself. And if that's how other people identify with me, that's their deal. That's not my deal. Like I got to figure this narrative out.
Yeah. Two things for me. One, I couldn't just rip the Band-Aid off. So starting the financial service at the time, I was 100% commission. So I still am married to the same woman, but I was married and I had a 2.5-year-old. And so my family needed to eat. And so, back to what my dad taught me about, if you ain't working, somebody else is. I've always been a grinder. So I would get up and I concocted a plan I would work out high school programs in the morning before school at 6 a.m. and I would charge them like $10 a kid. And so that the coaches couldn't work the kids out. So they would, or the kids would pay me to come work out 15, 20 kids for an hour before school. And then I would do that 2 or 3 times at night with 2 or 3 different schools so I could make some money. And then in the meantime, I would start my financial practice. So one, I didn't completely negate the basketball side because I needed to create some money. But then two, I just trusted some mentors and some people that said, hey, if you just do A, B, and C, eventually you're going to be successful. And so I aggressively attacked those things, but I was patient for the results to happen because it was going to take time to build that financial services, build the brand, build the trust, build the relationships. But So I needed to be patient with it, but I needed to attack it every day. And so if I didn't trust that process and I didn't have some of that basketball, I wouldn't have been able to survive.
So, it's very interesting you say it because I think that's how we all have to work through. Like, how does our passion still fit into our life, right? But you said something that's very significant that you trusted the process, and the process was you had to attack A, B, and C, right? But you were patient, knowing that the results were going to be a byproduct of you putting the work in every day. In basketball, you did get instant feedback during your workouts. Are the shots going in? How are the handles, right? How's my foot speed feel? How am I feeling cardio wise? Sometimes when you're grinding in the business world and you're working on those lead measures versus leg measures, you're not getting that immediate feedback.
Yeah.
How big of a challenge was that for you? And what is it that you did? Like, what was a story you had in your head telling yourself, even though you're a grinder, this was a different type of grinding, right? Like, it's a whole different process. How did you finally get to that point where it's like, I'm just showing up every single day? I'm showing up every single day.
Yeah. So what I looked at was if the average income in a first year financial advisor was, call it 70 grand, and it was 100% commission. If the first year, if the average was 70, okay, the things that I could control were, getting introductions or referrals and then points of contact. And so I would just mentally have to say, okay, if the goal was to do 1,000 referrals in a year, then every time I got a referral, I was telling my mind I'm earning $70. And same thing with my points of contact. If I had to do 40 points of contact a day, and I went and did the math on that, okay, I may not actually be earning that dollar on that phone call in that moment, but it was planting the seeds and stacking those future opportunities. And so I had a way to just, screw my mind up to be able to think as though I was earning money in that moment for my family when I really wasn't, to help me get through it. And then look, you got to have some wins, right? I mean, there's got to be some things that are happening to give you some light at the end of the tunnel. Um, and I think the other thing from a business standpoint is my wife is my partner and understood the challenge that it was going to take. I think so many times people that I see that go take on challenges, they don't include their significant other. And there's a disconnect of support there and understanding what it's actually going to take to be successful. My wife is queen, man. She was a big difference for me on that. And then financially, we lived within our means. Even after we started to have success, we still lived well within our means so that we could invest back into the business and do other things. As opposed to, again, sometimes I see people that they have a little bit of success and they start, spending it all, and it adds to the stress.
It's funny you talk about your wife, and I joke with mine. She is my number one fan, my number one supporter. Without her, none of this is possible, right? Ironically, your mom was my wife's high school volleyball coach, and to this day, my wife's favorite coach in any sport. Okay, on that side note, but anyways, you talk about that and including them in the process, right? And I joke with Nancy all the time that she tolerates me sometimes rather than supports me, even though it's full blown support. What was that like for you to go? You talk about screwing with your mind. I would call it like you condition your mind. This is what I need to do, right? Yeah. And you truly were earning the money. Then you're not going to reap the reward until later. But what was the conversation like when you sat down with your wife and said, "Listen, here's my game plan. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? Like, what are your questions? What are your feedback?" Did you guys have that conversation? Because I deal with clients every now and then that are thinking about making career moves, right? And they get really tunnel vision. Like, I know this is what I need to do. And I know this is what it's going to mean for me and my family, that I have to move, or I have to do this, or I have to take this type of pay cut, or whatever it is. And my question is, have you talked to your spouse? Have you talked to your partner? Have you talked to the other people that are going to be affected? What was that like for you?
Well, I think it goes back, like, I'm a dad of three girls. And, if my oldest daughter were to come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, can I stay at so-and-so's house?" if there was a track record of disobedience, not being responsible, that person was not a good influence on their life. The answer, I wouldn't have faith. No matter what she said, it's like, Dad, it's going to be good this time. It's going to be good this time. Like, no matter what her response was, the track record would have said, no, like, you're not going to get to stay at her house. So I say that from the standpoint of my wife had seen me work. My wife had seen me get fired, and the way that I responded to that adversity, and and earn that opportunity back with Conzo and move up a little bit with Conzo. So my wife had seen and experienced a track record of me doing what I said I'm going to do and living up to that. And so then when I came to her like, hey, like, I think it's time to get out. One, she was all in support because she'd actually see me once in a while from when I was coaching. She never saw me. But like, to go to 100% commission with a 2.5-year-old and another one on the way, like, and she couldn't work because, she'd been taken. So I think that the answer to that was because she had seen me and actually experienced me follow through. There was a level of trust deeper than just, hey, I'm married to you, so I trust you. It's, I'm married to you, I trust you, and you've proven to me in the past. So I have no other reason than to believe that you're going to do it again.
So 100% commission. When we got it fired at A&M in 98, literally every job I've had except coaching has been 100% commission. So I get the stress level, but I was single, right? It was real easy back then. My concern was having enough money for Cubs games on Friday and golf on Saturday. But for you, that's an added pressure to perform. That's an added pressure to put the hours in and put the time in and get results. How did you manage that in your head?
In the people that I coach and talk to these days, one of the things that I oftentimes say is you got a choice every day to be really comfortable at work and, not do the hard things, not do your points of contact, not have the hard conversations, show up later, go home early, do all the easy and be comfortable at work, which is going to lead to a lot of discomfort at home. Or you can choose to get into the mud and be really uncomfortable at work and like do the hard stuff, like do the things that you don't want to do and then do even more of it. And what's going to happen is it's going to lead to a lot of comfort at home. Mm-hmm. And so for me, again, back to trusting the process, like I was just willing to get really uncomfortable at work. And I knew that my heart was in the right place. Like I was truly just trying to help people. I wasn't trying to sell them something that they didn't need. I could utilize senior advisors and other people to help me as I was still getting started to become the financial advisor that I am now. So that allowed me to do the activity and the effort and to have the conversations with people because I was genuine in it. And, that allowed me to generate enough income and then to build from there early on.
How did you decide on the financial advising? Because it's you and I we still see it as a transformational opportunity for you to really impact others. But I'll remember, and I'll be the first to be real about it. In 1998, when I was 20 years old, there was nothing that could have been more transactional in the world that I went into in the mortgage business, right? The start of the refi boom. And I spent my entire life around, a transformational head coach, my father and guys in his circle. So to me, that was shell shock. But the financial advisor, you really are a transformational leader. But what made you decide that line of work? What made you decide that business?
Well, so when I left out of, I truly didn't know what I was going to go do. What happened was I had been away for a few days helping on the recruiting side when I was coaching with Coach Martin. And we had a recruiting dinner that night that I got back. So here in Knoxville, there's the Tennessee River, which is right outside my window. And the arena where the basketball team plays at and the coach's offices are right on that river. There's a road that goes right down there. And I went to go pick up my 2.5-year-old daughter. And she was coming with me to the recruiting dinner. And, 2.5, they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're doing, whatever. But as we're driving towards the restaurant that was on the river, we were going by the arena where my office was. And my daughter looks up and says, Daddy's home, and points to the arena. That was a Friday, and that was it. I went and let Conzo Martin know on that Monday that I was leaving and getting out of coaching. So I didn't know what I was going to go do. So I interviewed medical sales because my dad and his family was in the medical sales business industry, real estate. I had some of my dad's buddies and some local people that were going to invest in opening up a sports facility for me, and then obviously the financial services. And so what got me into it was I wanted to help people and I wanted to make impact. And look, I'm not gonna lie, like the opportunity to make money and to have the freedom that can come with the career to where you're spending time with relationships that are built not only in an office talking about their financial service, but also going to ball games with them. Like that was enticing. But of the 10 people that I talked to about their career opportunity, families and friends, there were only 3 people that said I should do it. Other 7 said, "Man, I wouldn't get into the financial services." And as I took time to evaluate it, what I realized is that all 7 that were telling me not to do it. The only reason the commonality of why they were saying not to do it was because it was really hard. And I'm like, well, like if it's going to allow me to make impact, if it's going to allow me to help other people, allow me to have flexibility as my kids get older so I can coach my kids, and it's allowed me to generate an income that's exciting. I mean, I can do hard things. Like if it's going to lead to that, like hard is good, you know? So that at the end of the day, that's what got me into it.
Well, and hard is what you've always done too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. But it's funny, and that's what I found over the years was people who said, "Well, you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that, or you can't." That's actually them telling you that they shouldn't do it, that they can't do it, that they
Yeah.
don't, you know. But it's hard when you're trying to figure it all out. That because you value their words, you value their insight. But at some point, you have to plant your feet and take a stand. And be like, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do, and this. And you have been incredibly successful in a financial advising business. Tell us about your practice now. Tell us about how you got to where you were, and I'm going to dive into a couple of questions about leadership.
Yeah. So I got to where I'm at because of the people around me, whether it goes back to my parents, my high school coaches, Coach Pearl, my wife, like all the people that have poured into me over the years. I mean, I started as an individual financial advisor with inside Northwestern Mutual, and about 4 years ago so I've been doing it almost 12 years now. Um, Now part of it, the leader of a team of about 62 people here in Knoxville. We've got our own practice, Axiom Wealth Management, that's still within the Northwestern Mutual system. And we serving a lot of different executives and business owners and coaches really around the country. And it's what I love about it most is it gives me the opportunity. Yeah, we talk about money and finances. Obviously that's a lot of our conversation, but when you're talking with people about their finances, I mean, that's one of the most vulnerable things that people talk about. And so the opportunity to get to pour into them and talking about leadership, talking about their family, talking about their faith, their health, like it becomes so much more. And that's what was the best part. I remember Jordan McRae, you can look it up, all SEC player at Tennessee. He had his first child around the time that I had my first child. And to be able sitting in our coach's office, you're talking about ball, but you're talking about with these guys about life. And that's what I think people don't understand, what a lot of coaches, the good ones at least, that's what they actually love about coaching. It's the X's and O's and the X's and O's, but it's like to be able to mold young men into men. I get to do that now through a different avenue through our financial practice. And so it's fun and different each and every day.
Well, I mean, relationships are the key to everything, right? And that's where you find the most fulfillment, the most joy. But as you built your team there, right? And what was it? What was it that helped you decide what your leadership style was going to be, what your conversation style was going to be with your potential clients, with your clients, like how you were going to show up, how you're going to lean into your values, you're a very values-based person. Like how was all of this going to show up, and how intentional were you about mentally rehearsing that?
Yeah. I'm very transparent and vulnerable with the people that I lead or that I'm around. I don't have it all figured out. I think in some ways leadership has been hard for me because I've always been a doer and a goer. And so much of leadership is slowing down and listening and talking and spending time with people. And in a business where you start out 100% commission, or the guy that's trying to develop his jump shot, like, you got to go get hundreds and thousands of jump shots. Like, that's the way that you can't just go watch film, right? And so same thing in the financial services. To build it, you got to go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden, as you mold into a leader, it's, I got to slow down, and like the inner turmoil of slowing down to help and coach and lead people, as opposed to meeting has been a challenge for me. It still is a challenge for me. That's my evolution that I'm trying to get to be more comfortable internally with slowing down and spending time with people to lead them, and not just be, hey, do what I'm doing. That is one piece that I think has been good about my leadership, is you can ask anybody in our office, whatever I'm asking them to do, I'm doing right alongside with them,
Right.
which I think is good. I think you get a lot of leaders that sit in the corner office and say, hey, you go do that while I'm sitting over here not doing anything, and how your teammates see you. But the slowing down piece has been a challenge for me.
So I had lunch yesterday with someone that man, this makes me feel older than I am, with someone that I recruited when he was in high school. He's now an incredible executive leader in the biopharma space. And we were talking about, I asked him, I said, who was a leader that you took the most away from? And he said something that brought me back to the conversation I had with David Covey 6 years ago. And he goes, honestly, I learned from this coach, who's one of his college coaches, how not to be. I call it learning vicariously through others' mistakes, right? And I'm not asking you to name any coaches or any people in your world, but I think there's a lot of value in it. And I think it's interesting to touch on. What are some of the things that you learned from the business of coaching college basketball? I mean, you and I always know, now everybody in the world knows it is a business.
Right.
What is it that you learned vicariously from some others around you, whether people whose staff you're on, who you played for, who you recruited against, right? Who were other coaches in your league, whatever it was? What were some, because I think we spent so much time focused on, what we learned from the best and what we learned from the books we read. It's all very relevant. It's all very applicable. It's all very significant. But I often think we miss the lessons we learn when we look at things from the lens of, this is what I'm not going to do. And we get real intentional about shaping our leadership style another way.
Yeah, I think the first thought that came to my mind is, accountability may not feel good in the moment, but it's a huge blessing to the long term. And I think there's been coaches that I've been a part of that in the moment, you're like, man, this dude is just all over me. Like, he's riding me, like, tuck my shirt in, do this, do that. Like, let me breathe. And then you look up and you're 41 years old and you're like, man, I'm super grateful for the fact that he held me to that high standard. And then because there's the flip side of that, right? I mean, we know guys in the coaching business that they let guys kind of do whatever, and then they wake up and now they're 35, 40 years old, and they don't have the responsibility to be the dad, the husband, the business owner that they need to be, because they just haven't had that level of accountability coming up.
Right.
So that would be the first thing. And then I think the preparation that the best leaders require of themselves. I think a lot of people think that the best people just show up and kind of wing it. And when you're in and around some of the best, you realize, like, they don't wing it, man. Like, they're prepared. They spend time. Yeah. The higher amount of leadership people go, like the good ones, like, let me talk about the bad ones first. The bad ones think as they move up the chain of command that they get more rights, right? They get to show up late to the meeting. They get to leave early. They get to not do what is expected because they're the boss. They got the right to do that. They've earned it. But really, the best ones I've seen, they've learned like there's a responsibility level to where I got to be holding up my end of the bargain. I got to be doing it. And there's more responsibility because there's more eyes, more people counting on you. And I've seen the best take that responsibility and own it, not see it as a right to do whatever they want.
And I would argue I see the best take that responsibility as an opportunity, as a gift, right?
Yeah.
As I'm fortunate to be in this position, to able to pour into, or able to impact, or able to influence, as opposed to, God, I'm really obligated to do. Like I have to do this. Like I can't believe this BS.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was something that you watched somebody do in your world? You're like, I absolutely will not be that type of leader. Like I will never, like, to me, I walked away from coaching, and I knew I had a choice, right? I could be really cynical about things in life because some of the things that I witnessed and experienced as a college basketball coach, and some of the people that I got close to, or that I knew, or that I was connected to, that weren't truly the authentic person that they claimed to be. Like they were way better at telling you how good they were and how impactful they were than actually having that impact. And I vowed never, like, I'm not going to talk, like, I'm simply just going to do, right? Like, I'm not going to tell people what I am or who I am. They're just going to experience it. What was something for you, like, you took away from your experience of coaching college basketball? Like, man, that ain't me. I could see how I could go down that road by accident. I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah. And I think the one, and it's for a lot of leaders that end up falling down, it's their pride, and not letting pride get the best of you in the decisions that you make, and thinking that you're invincible or that you can do whatever you want. And so, having people around you, my wife would be one of those that'll help keep you in check. I don't like to hear it.
I feel you there. Yep. I feel you on that one.
A real quick funny story. I've got a client of mine. He sold a business for, 9 figures. I mean, and ran a successful, like one of the key guys in the entire industry. And one day we got done with a meeting. He's got a couple daughters, and he said, "Mark, I go and I do these events. Like I'll speak at these events. I'm highly sought of in the industry. Like they ask me all the time about this, that, and they think I'm some expert. And I'm building this business, and it's really successful. And everyone thinks I'm a genius. And then it's like, I don't know what road I drive down, like what path I take, but somehow by the time I get home to my wife and my daughters, like they think I'm the biggest idiot in the world. Like I can't get anything right,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I need that. Like my wife is great. So that accountability factor is big. And then, maybe it's because it's the stage of life that I'm getting at, and my kids are getting older. One of the things that drew me out of coaching is I knew a lot of good guys that weren't able to coach their own kids. They didn't have a relationship with their wife and their kids. And I don't want that. And it's a hard balance because I've got more and more people at work. I've got more and more clients that are expecting more and more of me. And same thing with my wife and my kids. And so how do I have that correct balance, which I don't believe in balance, but how do I be present when I need to be present in both environments? Because I never want to look up at the end of the day and people are talking about me at my funeral, and my wife and daughters are sitting there in the front row, and everybody's talking about how great I am. And my wife and daughters are like, him? Like,
you didn't know him, right?
Yeah. Like I want to be the best for them first, and show up for them. And I think a lot of times leaders can get caught up in the expectations of everything outside the walls of their house. And I don't want that for myself.
And they sit, which speaks volumes about you, right? I mean, volumes. And those leaders will sit and they find ways to spin it. Like, well, I'm contributing to the family. Well, that's why there's food on the table. Well, that's why we're able to take these vacations. That's why we have these experiences we have. At the end of the day, the kids don't care about that. They care about you. Like, are you present? Are you there? And it's interesting because and it's the business that we know, but I saw it time and again, guys maybe not lose their wives and families. In other words, like divorce, we lose them, but lose them like exactly what you're talking about. Like they might have this legacy outside the home, But inside of that home, their legacy ain't that great.
Yeah, I hope another listener can relate to this because kids will tell you the truth. And it was like I was probably in my third year in the business, so I'm still like hustling. But I wanted to check that box or read my daughters a book before they went to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading the book, and my daughter goes, "Daddy, why are you reading the book so fast?" Because I'm like just speeding through it, like just trying to get it done. And it's like, one, they're going to tell you the truth, but it's not just, are you there? It's,
right.
And look, again, I struggle with it still to this day at times. Am I mentally present? Like, am I asking the question behind the question? Not like, "Hey, Charlie, how's your day?" Or, "Hey, Brooke, how was your day?" Like, "Hey, how was your day?" Like, and they say, "Good." Okay, well, tell me about it, right? Like, I want to know about it. And they can feel that sense of like, are you just checking the box and are you here and you're not present, or are you actually here and do you care about it? And I want to be that second.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, kids will tell you the God's honest truth. My daughter's funny, man. She tested me. You know, 7th grade, middle school. She's my child and Nancy's child, so she tests me. So today I got a call. I'm getting ready for it, and she leaves early. She's like 7:40 for school, and all of a sudden I hear, "Bye, Daddy." I'm like, "Oh no, we need a hug. Hug it up. Come on, let's go." She goes, "Nope, gotta go. We'll see you." And the front door opens and it shuts. I'm like, "No way!" So I'm pulling my clothes on and I'm running down the stairs. I just got done with work. I'm running down the stairs, and I see my wife, and I open the door. I go, "Her rides," and I turn around, and she's standing behind me, smiling like ear to ear. I'm like, "You really think like I don't care? What of course I want to give you a hug." It's like they they want to know that you're legit, and it's the best.
Yeah. It is the best honor that we can be given is to be a husband or a parent. And again, like I want to get that relationship right prior to anything else.
And I don't know about you. I'll guess here, but for me, I've learned more from my children about who I am, what I need to work on, what I'm good at, than I think I have from anybody else in this world, including myself.
Yeah, and what's important, and what also humbles me is, I believe a lot in it's not what's taught, it's often what's caught, and like I get mad at my one of my daughters for how she may communicate with me at times. And back to my wife being the truth teller, it reminds me of like, well, that's you. Like she's you. And so like how I show up every day is affecting my kids. So they teach me a lot of things, and they're good mirrors of, am I really showing up the way that I want to show up every day?
So here's a challenge for you. All right. Last time we were sitting there, my daughter, I had to go do some stuff on the board for our feeder program. I had to go do some uniform stuff for try-ons and stuff. And I come back, she says, "Dad, I got homework." I go, what do you mean you have homework? I go, "It's 8:30 at night. Here's what you've done since school got out." I go, "Okay, you got shots up. Great. Good for you." I go, "You rode your dirt bike for an hour and a half with all your girlfriends while they rode scooters. Awesome. You came and hung with me up at the middle school during uniform tryouts. And you wait till we get home to tell me you got homework." I go, "How much?" She goes, "A little bit." Well, a little bit turned into way more than a little bit. So we're sitting, and one of the challenges we had last year was she wanted me to read the problems to her so she could work out in her head as I was reading it to her. But they have the option to listen to it on their Chromebook, whatever. So we got her listening to it. I got her reading it. She kind of reverted back to her old ways and says, "Well, what do you think the answer is?" I go, "Oh, no." I go, "We're not going there again." I go, you're off to a great start." I go, "What do you think the answer is?" So she picks 2 out of 3. I said, "Okay, we're going to go down that road." So Dad's going to get real stupid here for a second. So I intentionally, and she still doesn't know this, and she probably thinks I am dumb as a box of rocks, which is fine as long as it makes her smarter, right? I intentionally gave her the wrong answer for 2 of the questions, in which they have to get to a certain score in IXL or EXL, whatever it was. And these 2 questions blew her back to like, she had another 20 minutes of work to do because I got them wrong on purpose. She didn't ask me again though. Like that was it. She was done with that. Like she was so. But sometimes that's like, as a parent, I learned like you got to kind of step out of the way and you got to let them struggle. And it's no different in leadership. How does that show up for you in your leadership role?
Yeah, well, for one, the way that kids do math these days, I probably got them wrong anyway. They do math all weird. But yeah, I mean, as soon as we go in there and answer the question for our teams, it undercuts their potential, because now they're not going to think for themselves. They're not going to try as hard, because they say, oh, well, he's just going to come in and answer it anyway, or change it. And, one of the biggest adjustments for me in my first 6-7 years was being able to hire people and being completely okay with them getting it 80 to 90% of the way that I would have done it. So that way it would free me up to go do what, the Lord's blessed me to be able to do, and help us grow and take care of our clients better. I really want to do, back to the doer and the hard worker. Like, I wanted to do it all. And that being able to empower people, that is true leadership. I mean, it's truly empowering people to become the best that they can become, and not just trying to do it all yourself and making it all about you.
Yeah. We in our partnership with Excel Institute and our coaching effect survey, we have the coaching performance equation. And we have the ability to quantify, and I think I shared this with the ability to quantify the impact the coaching experience and the coaching relationship has on the individual's production as well as the team's production, and connect it to the bottom line based on certain themes and certain coaching activities. It's freaking mind blowing. It's incredible. Our clients love it. But for me, the equation, because I believe relationships is force multiplier in your ability to coach people. And so you take R for relationship, and then you multiply that by the sum of order plus complexity, because as we've been talking about, you only grow through discomfort, right? And then that will drive your performance. But what are some of the ways that what are some of the ways, I was about to be redundant with that word there, that you go about connecting with the people that you lead to drive that authenticity and deepen that trust in your relationship with them? So they allow you, first they get vulnerable with you and you know what makes them tick, but so they allow you to push them outside their comfort zone and figure out how to create that order for themselves. So while you're out doing what your God-given abilities allow you to do, they can be there and be the doer and be the worker and get stuff done. How do you go about doing that?
But it's been an evolution over time of slowing down enough to get to understand them and who they are and what makes them tick, and what's important to them. And that then allows me to be able to spend the right time with them, and incentivize them the right way, encourage them the right way. I think the other component of that is when they ask something of me, when my team asks something of me, to do it and respect them asking me to do something, because I don't want to be the leader that I feel like, right, go back to the rights piece of it. Like, I got the right to get to it when I'm going to get to it. Like, if part of their process, if part of helping them do their job better is that they need, let's use an example, case notes after I get done with a client meeting, if they need the case notes within 24 hours, like, I need to case note it within 24 hours because it helps them do their job, as opposed to I could easily justify, like, hey, look, I'm in meetings all day. I run straight from my last conference call. Like, I'm walking into the gym to prepare for my kids' practices. Like, I could justify saying, hey, it's going to wait 48 hours. But me caring about what makes them tick, and then what helps them do their job better, I think gives me more leadership strength to be able to then coach them and have higher expectations of them.
Yeah. And you model the behavior. I mean, they see you do that, right? And they understand that you're walking a walk, you're talking a talk. And we take that word authenticity to connect it to this, and we break it down into honesty, integrity, and vulnerability. Honesty with others and with yourself. But then there's that integrity piece that you're talking about right now. And that's not morality, but integrity. Your word is gold. So you say what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, to the best of your ability, how you said you're going to get it done. But that vulnerability piece, right? And you already said it, but I want to go back to it. The transparent and vulnerable with your people. The impact that has on them opening up to you and you being able to learn more about them. What's that been like for you? Because getting a teenager or someone in their young 20s who is in an ego-driven sport, an ego-driven life, has spent their entire life being told how great they were, right? Yeah. And the whole universe centers around them. Getting them to be vulnerable is different than getting an adult to be vulnerable, right? How do you go about doing that?
Well, what the hardest part about that for me is, and I hate it in some ways, like I've almost become calloused to challenges, like the problems, because I deal with it every day. Whereas like a lot of our team members, if they mess up one time or they feel the tone of an email is different, like it can wreck their day, right? Where like, because that may be one of the only handful of adversities that they face that day where I'm like living in that. So it's hard for me because sometimes a team member will be discouraged or upset, and I'm like, that never even crossed my mind.
Right.
So it is challenging. And that's where I think the communication, the clear communication, the clear expectations, you're not going to get it right all the time. I mean, sometimes people are just going to be upset. And even if you've had the clear dialogue, hey, like come to me or talk to, Catherine on the team and bring it to her and then we'll talk and she'll get to, sometimes it still doesn't work itself out. But that the younger generation, I mean, it's just different. They're not used to eyeball conversations and having the ability to agree to disagree in some ways, but still respect one another's opinion and then move forward. And that's one of the best parts about sports. I mean, I was talking about with our middle school girls last night after practice, like you can go at each other and try to dominate them in that drill. And after you get done with the drill, high five them and say, hey, good work, and be excited that you just grew together as a team. In so many ways, that's just so foreign to the younger generation. Like if we're going to compete, it's like you're an adversary of mine. Like we can't work together. I hate you, right? And like that's one of the beautiful parts about team sports is like you can compete against each other, but then you also are going toward a unified goal, which is exciting.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into wrapping this up, I do have a question now that you went back to girls sports. Were you or are you more nervous? I know what the answer is for me. Are you more nervous and wound tight before you coach one of your daughter's game than any game you coached at Tennessee, any game you played in at UWM, including your high school state championship game? I don't know about you. I mean, seriously, like it's the most nerve-wracking thing coaching my daughter's basketball team. My son, it is what it is. For whatever reason, the girls, it's a different monster.
I call the timeout in the first half in the spring. We're down 4 points to a team that we should be beating. We're down 4 points, and all 5 girls are coming to the huddle crying. Down 4 points in the first half. I'm like, girls, like what are we doing? Like what's going on? So like when you throw in the hormones and the music, like it is. And these kids. Yeah, because like I think the other part of it is, and I hate to say it because it's that ego part that we're trying not to, that I'm kind of like trying to, some of it is like, man, like I coached in college. Like I should be able to, help affect winning this game. And now all of a sudden we're playing this guy that, it's the dad over here and they're beating you.
Yeah.
And so there's some expectations that you put on yourself to like, have the girls playing at a certain level because people in town know that you used to coach. And, but yeah, it is a little nerve wracking.
Yeah. The best is after like a tough loss or a huge win and you're still kind of wrapped up in the emotion of it. Like 10 minutes later, you realize they've completely moved on. They're not even thinking about the game, right? They're over there doing their TikTok stuff or they're talking about whatever. And it's,
I did my thesis in grad school on the reasons why kids play sports and go to camp as opposed to why their parents have them play sports or go to camp. And one of the main takeaways was exactly that. Like the parents want them to be, get scholarships and be really good and all this like meaningful stuff. Whereas a lot of the kids, it's like, I want to go hang out with my friends. Like I want to get the orange slices at halftime and the treat, like it's just the whole that like my wife and I, we talk about it. Like it'll be 8 o'clock at night and the game will have been over at 2 o'clock. And we're still thinking about like, I'm watching the film on my phone or on the iPad, thinking about, man, we should have done this. And my kids are out in the pool, like they're having fun, like not even worried about it.
It's awesome. Well, hey, before I can't believe time's flown like it has. Before I ask you the last question, where can people find out more? Mark Pancratz, please tell them about the Starting Five on Substack. That's an awesome newsletter. Thanks for doing that. It's so cool. And tell them more about Axiom Wealth Management as well, please.
Yeah, so the newsletter is something that we started this year, but they can follow me on the socials on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And then our financial planning services is Axiom Wealth Management. We work around the country. We're headquartered here in Knoxville, but we work with folks all over the place. And look, I mean, I love what people often don't know is what I typically post every morning is some of my readings or my self-talk, things that I'm working through. And so I definitely don't have it all figured out. And so if anybody ever wants to just reach out and jump on the phone and talk about anything that they may be working through, and I'm happy to do it because impact is one of the things that I'm most passionate about trying to help with.
Yeah, and you're so damn good at it too. And you're sincere, you're genuine, you're authentic. Twitter, you've got some great stuff on Twitter too. What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Is that what you call it? Do you call it a Twitter handle?
I still call it Twitter. I call it X, but like
X, whatever. Yeah.
As I'm learning from my middle school daughters, like all the names that we used to call things, like they got Riz and Cat, like stuff that I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, Cap, right? Yeah. Sigma, like all that. Yeah,
whatever.
I don't know if they're complimenting me, ripping on me, or both at the same time, but they're doing something.
Yeah, my daughter had me. My dad. We were driving to a game the other day. And I asked what song you want to put on, like what pump up song they put on. They're like, yeah, Dad, dance with us. Well, next thing I know is they're showing all the girls at the game.
Yeah.
Dancing while I'm driving, So whatever. It's fun.
I love when like a Beastie Boys song comes on or something comes on back from our day. And I kind of like start like, I turn it up. I know the words. Like, how do you know this song? I go to EJ. They go, EJ, how old do you think I am? He goes, well, it was your senior year in high school, the first year to 3-point line. I'm like, okay, we do not repeat that. All right.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. So last question for you, because I think this is really significant. It really shines a light on who you are. What is it that you enjoy most and look forward to the most with your clients, working with your clients?
Biggest thing is to where they finally feel comfortable enough to just share what their questions are. I think so many people these days feel like they got to have it all together because you think about the leader, right? Like you got to have a face on for the team that you're leading. Like we're plowing through, like we're going to be okay for our wives, for our families, for our friends. Like a lot of leaders are in the position because they're battle tested. And so when you can be with the CEO, you can be with the executive, and you finally get them to be like, look, man, I don't have all the answers. And now we can get to work. Like now we got to the deeper stuff to where we can actually start making impact. That's when internally I'm like, thank you, Lord. Like now we can actually start to get to work.
Yeah. That's awesome. Mark, I can't thank you enough, man. This has been fun. We gotta have you back. You know what we need to do? I need to get down to Knoxville. Does OU play at Tennessee this year? Did we look that up?
Basketball, they're there, I believe. They're in Oklahoma, and football there.
All right, we'll get that figured out. But we need to get down there and do a podcast episode on site for you. That's what we need.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Great. Well, Mark, hey, thank you. Listen, all the stuff that you shared, we're going to have it in the show notes. We'll have the links to your social. We'll have the links to Substack. We'll have everything. Listen, take him up. Pick up the phone. Shoot an email. Do something. Are we able to share your information on the show notes? Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Just not the picture of me. Just not the picture of me with Coach Pearl painted up.
Well, I can't promise that. Okay, there's no promises because that's the first thing I'm doing. We disconnected. I'm going and looking for that. I can't believe all these years I never knew that because I would have had it blown up by now and asked for an autograph, which I can still do though.
That's funny.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much. Hey, my best to your family. Love your mom and dad. So much respect for them. Your brother Zach. All right, everybody, tell them I said hey, and thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.